So today I'm very, very pleased to have with me Emily Jacob from ReConnected Life. Emily, thank you for agreeing to be interviewed as part of our inclusion interviews. And could you just share with those tuning in for today's interview a little bit about your work and the impact that you hope that that work is going to make?
So with ReConnected Life, what I do is I support, help guide, coach women who have experienced sexual violence in their past and are looking to move past that, move forward, and to feel whole and reconnected again, which is where the name ReConnected Life comes from. It's really the outcome, I hope, I intend of people working with me. I I coach one-to-one, but also I found that is, my time is infinite. It is not infinite, it's finite. That's the difference. Um, and it's expensive as well. And one of the things in recovery after rape and sexual violence is that it's so hard to access help, that being able to afford a coach or go to private counseling, it's really there. It's only the few who can do that. And so I think the thing I'm most proud of in the last few years is the relationships I've built up with charities across the UK, and of course the program which I originally designed, because coaching is expensive and I wanted individuals to be able to purchase it for themselves. I actually have started licensing it to charities, and now their end users, their service users, can access that support for free. And it's it's called Taste of Recovery, and it's being accessed by people when they join a charity's wait list. So that I remember when I was in that waitlist stage, and you don't know how long you're going to be there for. Or certainly I didn't at the time with the charity that I was with. I didn't know how long it would be, and it felt like I was drowning. I didn't know where to get help or if there was help. And there is help available on the internet. You can find help on YouTube, but you don't know if it's good help, and you don't know if you're going to be if it's going to be stuff, quality help that's delivered in a way that doesn't re-traumatize. And so I'm really, really proud that so many charities have been deciding to license Taste of Recovery and offering it to people when they're on that wait list, so that when they are waiting, they actually have some support. They actually have content that explains what's going on with their brain, and with why there's panic attacks, why there's night terrors, that takes away a lot of the uncertainty of what's happening and why, and also has a whole bunch of tools where people can learn to self-rescue for themselves. So you don't feel that you're just lost in that place. You actually start to understand how you can do some small things for yourself which actually can help you feel better. It's basically everything that I wish I had available to me when I was in that place. I've collected it from really my entire recovery journey myself, plus lots of extra learning, but also from my coach training journey. I'd never expected, when I was training to be a coach, that I would end up helping support women who'd experienced rape. But I did, because what I learned helped put me together. So I was like, wait, this stuff needs sharing. Yeah, that's what I do. I think I've rambled a little, but but the impact the impact I'm just like, when I have a bad day and I'm thinking, I'm feeling sorry for myself, I'm feeling like I'm not making much of enough of a difference in the world. If I can remember, and sometimes I remember to remember, that there are people who have never met me who are watching a video of me that I made a few years ago, and it's helping them, then I feel okay, it's all right. It's all right. And so I'm making more videos to help again. So I have a new course that, again, charities are licensing, that is all about moving from the surviving stage, which Taste of Recovery is all about, is how the hell do you survive, and the new program is moving from surviving to thriving. So that one I only launched it at the end of last year, and already the charities, even before I've finished doing all the tweaks to the videos and workbooks and things, charities are already saying yes, please. It will really help us, because when people leave our services, we haven't really got anything to kind of give them a soft landing. They've done however much counselling and therapy we can give them, and it's by. Whereas now they're going to have this ending program that will really help people to put into practice what they've been learning in counselling. I'm assuming that what I teach is also some of what has been included, but also has more ways of actually moving into that thriving space. So yeah, that's what's on, it's the new things for this year as well.
So it really is about making this accessible to people.
Yes.
And I think what you've talked about there is so important, because when the person who's experienced this accesses those waiting lists, they've already gone through a trauma, or they've come to a point sometime afterwards where the trauma's resurfaced and they've realised they need to either report it or to deal with it and get some support. And in that state, all of that trauma's been activated, even from the thing of being involved and telling people. And so to feel that there's a waiting list is almost like they're being re-traumatized all over again in that process, because there isn't that certainty and safety. And certainly through my own work with trauma recovery and supporting others in that, understanding certainty and safety and knowing what's in front of you, what a pathway looks like, can be incredibly powerful. In fact, it can be a lifeline for somebody who's dealing with this. The other thing that can be the lifeline is community, and knowing they are not alone with what they've experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I've set up the ReConnected Life community. At the moment it's on Facebook, but I'm thinking about moving it because Facebook.
Well, also privacy and things like that as well, particularly when you're dealing with what could be
it's a private
abuse.
group. It's a private group. So people can't see that you're a member, but people can find it and ask to join. But it's survivors supporting survivors, and that's really important, because actually, whilst community is absolutely important, I mean, Bessel van der Kolk says in Body Keeps the Score that it's the most important factor in recovery after trauma, is how soft is your landing with the people and community who support you. But when it comes to rape and sexual violence, so often we can't tell anybody. We can't tell our friends, perhaps, or our family group, because it's somebody who's in that family group or in our friendship groups. And even when we can, and even if we do, sometimes our friends are not equipped to understand how to support us. Even those that want to, they can end up saying the wrong thing that can make us feel not believed. But unfortunately, it's a sad fact that actually lots of people will choose not to believe, because it's safer that way. Psychologically, as a human, we need to feel safe, and if we could feel that this could happen to our friends, then that means it could happen to us. So it's safer to believe that it didn't happen, but that makes you a terrible friend. But so for survivors, it's really hard to know when to disclose and to, you know, even if they could disclose. And there's that, it's that kind of paradox. If you, community is really important to recovery, and we can't tell people because we don't get the right support. So that's why I set up the ReConnected Life community, is because it's full of people who do understand, who do get it, who don't need to have it explained, who understand straight away when someone comes into the group and says, I'm having trouble with this. There's a whole mountain of support. There's never any questioning or judgment. It's just everyone's 100% believed from the beginning. And it's so beautiful to see them supporting each other and the encouragement that they give each other. I moderate, but I hardly have to. It's quiet group sometimes, but when someone raises their hand and says they need help, the help is always there.
And I think having that early support model and that accessibility, actually, this is the thing that makes the difference between, you know, does it turn into post-traumatic stress disorder, or can we take the experience? And as you say, post-traumatic thriving, which I know is the model that Ilona Bonawell looks at, how can we take, there is an event, and it can be an unspeakable event that impacts and causes damage, but with the right support, how the individual, as you say, can reconnect and rebuild their life beyond that is what's important, to not be defined perhaps as a victim.
Yeah, I'm not picking you up on language, but personally, well, I guess I am. Personally, I don't like the disorder in post-traumatic stress, because
I agree,
actually,
by the way. I agree, because a trauma is something that's happened to you, not something that you've caused. And actually what you're having is a normal reaction to abnormal experience. So I agree, I'm using the phrase because it's what everybody understands.
Yes.
From the DSM.
So post-traumatic stress will happen. Very, not to everybody, to be fair. About 30% of people who have a severe traumatic incident like rape will not necessarily go on to, you know, will not develop post-traumatic stress. They generally have had no adverse childhood experiences, and other factors that kind of make up the capacity for how much stress we can, and you know, we can as an individual maintain, will have not been as heavy as for others, and they can be, you know, they are lucky. No one's lucky who's had this experience. But post-traumatic stress, it happens. I think that it's something we have to move through.
Yes.
And that moving through is really, really hard and really, really painful. It can be made less hard and less painful by the right support interventions, by having access to the right help at the right time. But it's still always going to be hard and painful. And sometimes there's post-traumatic growth. And I actually believe that that happens a lot more than we are led to believe by the way people talk about sexual violence very much, is that you will always be broken, you will always be changed, you will never get back to being what you were. And to an extent that's true, you will be changed, but you can choose what you change to. And we will not always be broken. We might always have a scar, but we don't need to be broken by it. And I think that rhetoric doesn't help survivors who are wanting to recover, and yet they believe that maybe they can't, because that might mean that what happened to them, for me, it certainly, I felt for a long time, if I was better, then that meant that what he did wasn't that bad.
Yeah, and I think there's also another piece in here as well, like particularly when we look at things like the legal system, how these things are portrayed in the media. If this happens to a woman, and I'm also going to say, it happens to women, it happens to men, but if it happens to somebody who is a strong character, and it does, again, more than is reflected, because an abuser, sometimes that is the sole reason that they're going to abuse
Yeah.
for power and control. So they
Yes.
seek somebody who was whole and very much in themselves to do that too. But if the survivor then comes across as being powerful, having voice, they can be questioned. You know, sometimes when we see this criminal proceedings, quite dismissively and aggressively through the legal system, particularly by criminal barristers. And, you know, this again, I think really, you know, from those reports that we've seen of that over the years and the portrayals of that, actually does cause victims and survivors to feel, I've got to be this certain way.
Yeah, we've got to be a
Yeah.
victim. We can't be strong because we won't be believed if, if we come across that way. So we
Yeah.
have to play to the perception of what a
Stereotypes,
victim
I think. It's a
is.
stereotype, isn't it?
It's a stereotype. I
Mm.
I mean, it's so few cases get to our through our what I call our injustice system,
Yes.
because such a small amount will even be reported to the police.
Mm.
Then the numbers that go through the CPS that get we've seen all of the awful statistics that have not been getting any better.
Yes.
It just but there's also this question. I think that often because of that as well, we often tie the fact as survivors. I know I did it for a while. I know people in my community do it. Is you feel that getting justice is part of your healing journey, and that is not true.
Mm.
Not getting justice does not mean that we can't be healed, and not stepping up for ask for justice does not mean that means you don't deserve healing.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves healing, and healing and justice are not connected, and we've got to unpick that, because at the moment I think very much they do seem to be connected, that if you get justice everything's going to be okay. Well, it's not. People who've got justice still have to work really hard
It
to feel
still
healed.
happened.
The
It's
healing process
happened.
still has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think what's more important than, if you like, you know, as we know, the system is stacked against survivors getting that outcome. We know that. What is more important is those that have been through the experience can firstly access support, to be believed and be supported.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might actually mean for an individual, actually, you know, that they do need to build new communities around them as they go through that process. But certainly the thing that I've seen most powerfully, I mean, particularly, you know, in moving through that process of dealing with what's happened and maybe is the trauma, you know, there can be other things then that we need to deal with in terms of secondary illnesses, in terms of the need for, you know, time off work to access counselling or anxiety attacks and medication, this type of thing. But then beyond that, how does somebody rebuild? And what I find is there's also another stage as somebody comes through healing and comes through, if you like, reclaiming their power. Okay? Because I firmly believe, you know, we're all born with power, and there's things that happen that can make us feel diminished. When we reclaim that, it's giving voice, and that voice might be in a community, a private community such as yours, where they're sharing experience. it can be, and as we've seen, and exactly as you've done, Emily, be that thing of actually we're going to take this experience and we're really going to use that to share, give voice to it. Because I think when we give voice, we reduce the shame that people feel. Nobody should feel shame because this has happened to them, because the blame squarely sits with the perpetrator.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I give voice, is because I can, and because I know it's important for survivors to see another survivor who can and is. And I hope no survivors think that I have it all together, because I don't. I'm a human being, but that, you know, that is no longer in that place of feeling done to. Giving voice is so important because it is a reclamation of power, but
Yeah.
it's also something that's so difficult for people, so many people, to do. If it has been your family member, if it has been a friend, if it has been a co-worker, it's not something you can easily share and give voice to. If you are working in a, you know, you're vulnerable and you rely on the abuser for some, you know, your economics, financial situation, your health situation, you know, you cannot give voice easily, even if you can set aside shame that I think all survivors will initially feel, that self-blame that we've been conditioned to feel by society's myths about, well, you shouldn't have been drinking, you shouldn't have worn a skirt, all that kind of stuff. It comes, you know, as a, you know, that you were fine, that you did things that you're allowed to do as you go through life, and this, but actually you still go through self-blame. It's a natural thing, because again, as I said, psychologically we want to believe that we can be safe. So if we blame ourselves, if we were partially to blame, then perhaps we could be safe if we don't do it. So that psychological stuff happens. But even if we put away the shame and could talk to people about what happened, it still takes a lot to share what's such a private invasion of self to the outside world. However, even if that world is just your closest friend, it can be, it's a real privilege, I think, to be able to speak up. And that's one of the things I noticed in throughout the Me Too sort of peak, I guess, of, you know, it was, is that actually not everyone can say that. Not everyone can raise their hand and say me too, even if they were just talking about being groped on the underground. And that's not just, sorry, there's no hierarchy in this. That can be as traumatizing for somebody as anything else.
All abuse is abuse, isn't it?
All abuse is abuse. But it's this stuff really thrives in the shadows, and it's the kind of crime and that happens in those shadows, and really it kind of gaslights you, I guess, into making sure it stays there. Speaking out about it is considered, well, it's, if I go to a party or even a networking meeting for business and people ask me what I do, it's kind of like, don't bring that here. You know, there's a taboo about talking about this stuff. And so bringing light into these shadows is not the easiest thing to do, but I really believe that it's so important to do that as much as possible, to give a voice to what would otherwise be a dirty little secret, which is worse. You know, it's just, you know, it's
And I think that's, you know, that's why it's so important. I was so pleased when you agreed to be interviewed, because giving voice, shining the light on this, and I think, you know, the work that you're doing, that you're role modeling for others as well to be able to do that, sharing that expertise. And as you say, big decision to decide, actually, I'm going to disclose and I'm going to be public about something so private that's happened. So Emily, I really applaud and honour you for doing that, because the impact that you're making and the way that you're going about that is powerful, and I really hope it continues to reach many more people through the charity collaborations you have. So thank you so much for sharing, and we will obviously share all of your links and details so people can reach out, they can find out more about the powerful work that you're doing. If you have one message that you want to leave people with from today, what would that one message be?
I believe you, and it will get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.